Hello, welcome to lesson 32. We are going to talk about comparative and superlative adjectives and adverbs, the genitive of comparison, and the partitive genitive. So far, we have only been using positive degree adjectives and adverbs. So, an example of a positive degree adjective, happy, a positive degree adverb, happily. So now we're going to add in comparative and superlative forms of both adjectives and adverbs. And so how might you be translating a comparative adjective? Well, happier, more happy, rather happy. Those are all ways that you might translate a comparative adjective, a comparative adverb, more happily, rather happily. How would we translate a superlative adjective? For example, happiest, most happy, very happy, or an adverb, most happily, very happily. Now, the easiest way to form a comparative or superlative adjective or adverb is to just use the positive degree that we already know, along with the comparative adverb malon or the superlative adverb malista. So let's look at an example first with just an adjective. Denos, clever. So malon denos means more clever, cleverer, rather clever. And malista denos means very clever, cleverest. Okay. Now let's look at examples with a positive degree adverb. Malon axios, more worthily, okay, rather worthily. Malista axios, most worthily, very worthily. Finally, let's look at an example with a participle. Okay, malon philumenos, more beloved, rather beloved. Malista philumenos, most beloved, very beloved. And in fact, using malon or malista is the regular way to make a participle comparative or superlative. But the most common way to make an adjective comparative or superlative is actually to add endings. For the comparative, we're going to add the endings teros, tera, teron. And for the superlative, we're going to add the endings tatos, tate, taton. So take the positive degree of the adjective. So we're going to try it first with denos. Take the positive degree of the adjective. Take the stem from the masculine. And if the last syllable of that stem is long, then we're going to add an omicron before the teros, tera, teron, and tatos, tate, taton endings. So denoteros, denotera, denoteron, cleverer, more clever, rather clever. Denotatos, denotate, denotaton, cleverest, very clever, most clever. Now let's look at sophos. So here's the positive degree of the adjective, sophos. Here's the stem. So if the last syllable of the stem is short, then we add a long O, an omega, before the endings, and we end up with sophoteros, sophotera, sophoteron, right? Smarter, wiser, and sophotatos, sophotate, sophotaton, wisest, smartest. So let's talk a little bit more about how you figure out whether that last syllable of the stem is long or short. So here is a list of all the adjectives that we already know that form their comparatives and superlatives in a regular sort of way. So we'll use these as examples to figure out whether those stems end in a long or a short syllable. So first off, if the stem contains, if that last syllable of the stem contains a long vowel, then that syllable is long. So here's delos. There's the stem. Only has one syllable, so that's the last syllable, and it contains a long vowel, an eta. So the comparative of delos would be deloteros, and the superlative would be delotatos with an omicron. This is long, so that one is short. Okay. If it contains a diphthong, it's going to be long. So the next example can be doulos, doule, doulon, enslaved. There's our stem. It contains a diphthong. Two vowels pronounced as the same syllable. So again, that's long. It's a long syllable. So douloteros. Okay, so this syllable's long, so we use the short vowel. One more way that that syllable could be long is if it contains a short vowel, but it's followed by two consonants in a row. So an example of that would be tuflos. Okay, so there's our stem. This is a short upsilon, but it's followed by two consonants, so that makes that a long syllable. So tufloteros or tuflotatos, right? Long syllable followed by the short O, the omicron. Okay? Otherwise, it's short. So sophos, a short vowel, the short O, followed by only one consonant. Or another example, axios, right? That I is short, that iota is short. So the comparative of axios would be oxyoteros. Okay, so short iota, short syllable. So then we use the long O, the omega. Okay, so a syllable is long if it contains a long vowel, a, like delos, a diphthong, like doulos, or a short vowel followed by two consonants, like tuflos. If it's short, it's a short vowel not followed by two consonants, then it gets the omega before the teros ending. All right, another exception to that rule we just learned is adjectives that have a stem that ends in sigma. And in fact, the only one we know is alephas. Then you take that stem that ends in a sigma and you add the teros, tera, teron endings and the tatos, tate, taton endings directly to the stem. So alethesteros, alethestatos. If you have an adjective whose stem ends in nasal, then you actually add epsilon sigma to it and then the endings. So eudaimonesteros, eudaimonestatos. And in fact, eudaimon is the only adjective we know so far whose stem ends in a nasal. Now, comparative and superlative adverbs are really easy. For all these adjectives that form their comparative in teros and their superlative in tatos. To form a comparative adverb, you just use the neuter singular nominative and accusative. So denotaron, more cleverly. And for the superlative, you just use the neuter plural nominative and accusative. Sophotata, most wisely. Two more exceptions from adjectives we know. The comparative of palaios is palaiteros, and the superlative is palaitatos. So we're adding the endings directly to that stem. With philos, it's such a common adjective. With philos, we have two options. You can either add the endings directly to the stem and get filteros, filtera, filteron, and filtatos, filtate, filtaton, or you can add the endings to philai, so philaiteros and philaitatos. Now, we have comparative adjectives. How do you compare two things? So, you can use a and the same case for the compared things. So, let's take a look. De notra ta probata e hoikunes. The sheep are cleverer than the dogs. Okay, so here's our A. The sheep are nominative plural, so the dogs are nominative plural. Okay, another example. Philo tus hippus malon e tus anthropus. I love the horses more than the people. The horses are accusative plural. The people are accusative as well, right? If these are accusative, those are accusative. Whatever two things you're comparing with an A need to be in the same case. The other way to do a comparison is with the genitive of comparison. So here's our same sentences, but with genitives of comparison. The sheep are cleverer than the dogs. The dogs are in the genitive, it's a genitive of comparison. I love the horses more than the people, genitive of comparison. Whatever case the first thing is in, okay, here nominative, here accusative, the thing you're comparing it to goes into the genitive. Finally, we're going to talk about the partitive genitive and about hoti or hos with the superlative. So first, the partitive genitive, which we're learning now because you often see it with the comparative or the superlative. So our first example, ten sophoteron ton paidon horo. I see the wiser one, the wiser of the children. That's a partitive genitive. I see the wiser one of the children. De notaton ton probaton tus kunas paideuse. The most clever of the sheep will teach the dogs. Again, partitive genitive. Finally, and this one is not with a comparative or superlative, but it's still a partitive genitive. Ekeinos hohelen apektenen hanaton fulakon. That Greek killed one of the guards. Partitive genitive. Now let's think about hoti or hos with the superlative. So, what hoti or hos plus the superlative does is it makes the superlative even more intense. The best way to translate it is as whatever as possible. So let's look at some examples. Ekeinos honomos en hoti axiotatos. That law was as just as possible, as worthy as possible. Hos de notata ainta probata. The sheep were as clever as possible. Hoti and hos mean the same thing. There's not a difference between them. So those sheep were as clever as possible. One more, and this one's with an adverb, a superlative adverb. Zdetumen padewen hosofotata. We are seeking to be teaching as wisely as possible. So what hoti or hos does with the superlative is makes it as intense, as superlative as it can be. And that's it.